So welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to this daily digital micro webinar. And I was going to say this morning, but it's actually this afternoon now. Let me just see if my slide will move on. There we are. We're going to be talking about Panopto review for teaching. I'm Aid from QED, and I know that most of the time your daily digital micro webinars are delivered by our excellent digital skills team. QED kind of sits alongside digital skills in terms of supporting staff with their technology enhanced learning. So many thanks to the digital skills team for their invitation to come and speak to you this afternoon. So I've only got 10 minutes, so I don't want to spend it all the time introducing myself. So this is what we're going to look at. So Panopto review for teaching. What is Panopto? How is it best applied to teaching? Where's it most useful? And I'm also going to offer you some kind of top tips in terms of practicalities to just make those Panopto review recordings as effective as they can be in terms of your learning and teaching. So yeah, at the end of the session, hopefully you'll gain an understanding of what Panopto is and what it can do, and perhaps more importantly, start to consider how it can be used to enhance the student experience, which is our sort of our primary goal. So from the start, what is Panopto Review? I should also say that because this is only 10 minutes, I will signpost you to further workshops and resources at the end of this session, and we can pop them in the chat as well, or wherever the best place is, just to make sure that you can take this this journey on further. So Panopto Review, well, it's basically a tool to create asynchronous, therefore recorded video content. The good news is it's very simple. Obviously, simple does mean that it doesn't necessarily have all the kind of post-production features that some things do, but at least it's just a big red record button that you can press and get started. And what it essentially does is it captures your screen and also captures your narrative, your description of the content on your screen via your mic and webcam. Panopto integrates with PowerPoint. So obviously it's capturing what's on your screen anyway when you're delivering PowerPoint. But what Panopto does is it actually collects all the content from the slides and uses that to create a chronology for the recording so that students can navigate their way around really easily. The auto caption engine in Panopto is really good. I think it's about 95% accurate, which is great in terms of supporting inclusivity and accessibility. And from a student perspective, Panopto plays back on any device and through any browser. So that means that you don't have to download any extra software in order to watch Panopto videos. Panopto does include a simple editor, which allows you to top and tail and maybe chop bits out the middle. It is only very simple, but it can be quite useful. Panopto is also integrated with Moodle at Cardiff Met, which means that staff generally record into module folders, which then creates a really straightforward workflow in terms of getting those recordings onto Moodle. And Panopto also, as well as allowing you to capture your screen, it basically allows you to capture anything that provides a USB input. So you can plug in extra cameras, visualizers, microscopes, anything that's got a USB input. So you can create practical demonstrations as well. So it's quite a versatile tool, and hopefully in conjunction with Teams, which is obviously a more synchronous, discursive medium, it provides quite a good mix in terms of delivering that sort of didactic content. So that's what Panopto Review is. I just thought in case it's useful to set the context of how that then transfers to the student experience. This is what students see when you've made a Panopto Review recording. You've got the webcam capture over there on the left-hand side. That's back in the days when we could actually stand up in classrooms. Hopefully we're getting back to that now. The other sort of main portion of the screen is the screen capture, and the student can actually customize this. They can swap stuff around, they can make it full screen on the slides, full screen on the webcam, whatever they want. They can do that using the controls down here, and that's also the transport controls, the usual stuff like play, stop, pause, other useful stuff like rewind 10 seconds. That's where you can switch the captions on. And they've also got the opportunity there to change the speed, which I'm going to come back to in a second in terms of where that can be useful. You can see here in terms of navigating through the recording, we've got the chronology there from the PowerPoint over on the left-hand side, but students can also jump to where they want to find particular content using the visual thumbnails as well over underneath the screen capture. I don't know if my my mouse pointer is coming out here, but there's a little search symbol just there, and that's where students can search Panopto recordings, both for words that appear on the PowerPoint slides, and also because it's capturing all the audio and turning it into captions, it also searches the whole of the audio track. So students can very much find their muddy points in their learning, or the bits that they want to find in the recording, which can be really quite powerful. Um, and this little area over here, this is where students can write their notes into Panopto if they wish to, or bookmark parts of the recording that they might want to come back to for revision. There's loads more in there. That's the whistle stop tour, but I just thought it'd be useful if you haven't seen what Panopto looks like from a student perspective. You can see how those opportunities manifest in the student interface. In terms of how staff are using Panopto at Cardiff Met, these are some of the use cases. Obviously, because it's recorded content, it's great for catching up if students miss a session or if they're revising for an exam. And I've mentioned that note taking can be done slightly differently. Even if students aren't writing notes into Panopto, what they might do is watch the recording once just to kind of engage with it, get it in their head, and then write their notes the second time around, which can be quite useful. Um, because of those facilities in terms of being able to search and change the speed and stuff like that, it can support students whose first language isn't English, and that can be really useful in terms of being able to go back and really work out what the narrative is trying to explain. And obviously for fact checking, I mentioned sort of muddy points in learning. It's great for students being able to really search for those things quite strategically throughout the recording. Because it is video based, obviously it supports students with different learning styles, and also I mentioned captions for accessibility. And I think because it's recorded content and it's available on demand essentially for students on any device, it really does kind of tick that box for flexibility, and students being able to manage their learning around other requirements such as caring needs or work. And I mentioned video demos as well. For creating content where it's not screen capture, but it might be capturing the process of something practical like in dental technology or ceramics. Flipped learning is probably the biggest kind of evolution in terms of pedagogy, in that the idea is that Panopto will deliver the lecture content, and then the more interactive element, which could be facilitated either face-to-face or using Microsoft Teams. That's where you can kind of really get underneath the skin of it and do more interactive elements to the learning, with Panopto providing, as I say, that delivery part of the mix. Panopto also allows students to record presentations and submit them into a secure kind of Dropbox type thing. So there's a few things. I feel like I'm a salesperson for Panopto, but I just wanted to give the picture of what it can do, so then staff can map it to which part of their practice it's most useful. So that kind of will hopefully give you an idea of where Panopto can be applied kind of most usefully. In terms of practicalities, obviously you'll need a computer or a laptop, but also there is an app for tablet and phone. You will need a microphone, which is obviously built in but external if you're using a PC. Same with webcam, built in on a laptop but external on a PC. Now the webcam is actually optional in terms of the software. I'm going to come back to that in a second in terms of where its value might lie. And in terms of like the other part of the ingredient list, yeah, you need to install either the Panopto app, or also there's something called Panopto Capture now, which runs in the browser. So you don't need to install anything, and that could be useful if you're maybe using a different machine, or certainly for students who maybe don't want to install the software. So there's a few options there in terms of which tool is used for what kind of content. Moving on to top tips. I think I'm doing okay for time. So this is really just in terms of if you are going to make recordings, if it's a face-to-face, if it's a live teaching session that you're recording, that potentially would be sort of a 45-minute session, and you can't change that. But if you're designing for online, the recommendation is that you aim for this kind of 5 to 25-minute duration, just in terms of mapping the sort of the natural attention span and engagement span for learners. And in terms of engagement, yeah, I mentioned webcam before not being essential to make a recording, but we've certainly found that if you do use the webcam, it just humanizes the content. It's not a disembodied voice. It creates potentially more of a connection between the student and the teacher. And certainly anecdotally, we've heard from students that if they can see their lecturer, even if it's just a talking head type shot, then they're more likely to engage a little bit deeper for a little bit longer. So it just kind of, I suppose, creates that more personal experience. I've got perform there. I'm not suggesting you go crazy, but I think in terms of whenever you're delivering content, you want to almost kind of pretend that you're delivering to a room full of people like you would, and that does kind of in terms of the use of voice and body language, that does support engagement as well. Um, Even though it's a recorded medium, you can still post questions and set activities and encourage the students to pause whilst they reflect on something. Panopto's also got a quiz tool which inserts a quiz into the recording. The recording stops and maybe a set of multiple choice questions come up. And that again can help students reflect on maybe some learning points as they go through the material. From a very practical perspective, and I know it's the same with other things like Teams, it's worth shutting down software with pop-ups, just because if you're recording it, you don't want potentially confidential stuff being captured along with the recording. And also, yeah, find a quiet space to record, not just so you get that clear audio that then can create high quality captions, but also I think in terms of being able to focus on a recording, it's certainly much easier to do that in a quiet space if you've got one. I'd say this is the biggest bit of advice I could give to anyone is I think the minute you get a record button, you feel like the thing you're recording has got to be perfect, and that's just never going to happen. Just like a face-to-face session is never going to be perfect. I think we also shouldn't be aiming for perfection in that setting, because what students want is authenticity. They want the thing to be real and human and to be as much like a kind of a real experience as possible. So seeking perfection is not only fruitless, but not exactly what you want to do. I think authenticity is the way to go. That's part of the kind of video literacy that we've got these days. And another bit of advice, if you haven't used Panopto for a while or you're trying something different, I would definitely do a test recording, purely because you don't want to spend 20 minutes making the perfect thing, although obviously I've said there is no perfect thing, play it back and realize that the audio was a little bit low, or maybe you were capturing the wrong screen or something. So yeah, do a test recording. That's always going to be a good tip. And that's it. I hope hopefully I've kind of it's been a bit whistle stop. I just wanted to give you a flavour of Panopto and where it maybe maps to all the other tools you've got, including Teams. In terms of next steps, in terms of if you want to know more about using Panopto, you can contact us on review@Cardiff Met. If it's more of a technical question about installing the software, then it's obviously the IT help desk. We've got a support site which I'll post the link to into the chat. And then, yeah, next steps. If you wanted to know more about using Panopto, we have a Getting Started with Panopto Review workshop. Mentioned quizzes as well. We've got a workshop on that. And also, as you start to create more content, you might need to manage, edit, and organize your Panopto material. And we've got a workshop on that as well. They're scattered throughout the year, but we've also got something coming up next week called DigiLearn, which gathers together those 3 workshops plus other workshops related to Moodle and other technology enhanced learning tools. So again, I'll put the link to that in the chat afterwards in terms of if you want to book onto DigiLearn, that's available.